In a world where intelligence is power, most live unaware of who truly holds the advantage. But there are signs subtle, sharp, and dangerous that reveal when a mind moves beyond the herd, operating on a level few can see or defend against. Do you possess them? Human nature is blind to its own hierarchy. The strong disguise their intellect, the weak disguise their ignorance. But true intelligence is not measured by knowledge alone, it is measured by how one wields it. It is the art of foresight, the subtle craft of influence, and the ability to see the hidden threads that govern men and their decisions. In this discourse, we will dissect the signs of such rare intellect, the kind that doesn't merely observe the game, but rewrites its rules. Power belongs to those who see long before others do. You live among people who reveal everything, not with words, but with gestures, glances, and the slight tremor of their voice when truth threatens to escape. Yet most never notice. Why? Because they are blinded by their own assumptions. They believe what people say rather than studying what people show. The art of perception begins where naivety ends. Consider the courts of Renaissance Italy. Rulers feared not soldiers, but advisors who could see too much. A general might win battles, but a man who could read motives, he could unmake kings. One glance at a rival's expression across the banquet table was enough to know who plotted treachery, who feared exposure, and who was ready to be bought. Do you possess that sight? Perception is not simply observing. It is dissecting. It is interpreting the smallest signals as indicators of deeper truths. A hesitation before a handshake, averted eyes at the mention of loyalty, a smile that fades a second too soon. These are not accidents. They are cracks in the mask, and the one who notices controls the outcome of every exchange. Psychologists call it micro-expression recognition, a skill refined by interrogators and negotiators alike. The tiniest twitch of the mouth can reveal contempt, dilated pupils, suppressed excitement. Hands clasped too tightly, concealed anxiety. But the truly intelligent do not merely recognize these signs. They exploit them. They shape their response to elicit more. They test. They probe. They watch the reaction ripple. Have you ever given someone a piece of false information just to see how they'd carry it? Or told a story with a missing detail to discover who would try to fill it? That is the strategist's eye at work. He sees human beings not as solid figures, but as living maps of weaknesses, desires, and fears. Every glance a landmark, every word a clue, every silence a revelation. In politics, perception is the difference between survival and ruin. Caesar ignored the signals in the Senate, the uneasy smiles, the guarded tones, and it cost him his life. Borgia, on the other hand, saw everything. When allies trembled in his presence, he knew their loyalty was fear, not conviction. So he secured obedience through calculated generosity one day and cold brutality the next. He perceived the shifting balance of fear and gratitude and adjusted his hand before it was too late. This skill is not confined to courts and kingdoms. It applies in every room you enter. At work, do you sense who truly respects you and who masks envy behind polite approval? In friendships, do you detect who seeks your company and who seeks what your company provides? Most never ask these questions. They accept smiles as sincerity. They mistake agreement for loyalty, and they wonder why betrayal strikes them like lightning from a clear sky. But you must think differently. When someone laughs at your joke, ask, is it amusement or alliance? When they offer help, ask, is it generosity or leverage? When they speak ill of another, ask, is it truth or an invitation to share in their disloyalty? This is not paranoia. It is precision. It is the disciplined awareness that human behavior is rarely honest in its first appearance. And once you see what others cannot, you begin to guide the game. A single well-timed glance, a pause that lingers just long enough, a word that plants doubt or reassurance. These become tools of influence, because you already know what the other person feels before they do. But remember, this perception is dangerous. The moment others suspect you see through them, they will either fear you or seek to destroy you. So you must master not only the art of seeing, but the art of appearing blind. In the next stage, we uncover how silence, strategic, measured, and unnerving, can become the sharpest weapon in the hands of those who perceive too much. Will you learn to wield it? Words reveal. Silence disarms, and most people fear silence. They rush to fill it, pouring out thoughts, secrets, and weaknesses in a desperate attempt to escape discomfort. But the wise, they understand that silence is not emptiness. It is leverage. In courts and councils of power, those who spoke least were feared most. Not because they lacked knowledge, but because no one knew how much they possessed. A single pause before answering could force rivals to question their own words, wondering if they had spoken too quickly, too boldly, too carelessly. And often they had. Consider the fate of advisors who tried to flatter kings. Many revealed their loyalties and fears in long, eager speeches, but the strategist would say little, letting others expose their intentions while he measured every syllable for weakness. One who speaks less hears more, and one who hears more rules the room without a crown. Psychology confirms it. People equate silence with superiority. When you do not rush to answer, they assume you are weighing options, calculating outcomes, deciding whether their words deserve a response. The delay unsettles them. It forces them to fill the void with explanations, rationalizations, and justifications you never requested. They confess their motives simply because you did not interrupt their own fear. Have you ever paused after someone made a bold claim and watched them unravel, rushing to justify themselves further? Have you seen them talk themselves into guilt without a single accusation? This is not chance. This is silence weaponized. History is full of such moments. When Cesare Borgia confronted a treacherous ally, he did not accuse him outright. He let the man speak, smiled, deny. Then he simply looked at him and said nothing. The silence broke the man faster than any threat. Within hours, his betrayal spilled forth, not because he was forced to confess, but because he feared what silence meant. Strategic silence is also a form of bait. By withholding words, you force others to reveal how much they truly know. An enemy expecting protest will expose his plan when none comes. An ally will speak of loyalty until you notice it sounds more like fear. Every pause you command becomes a mirror, reflecting the truths people try hardest to conceal. But here lies the subtlety. Silence must appear deliberate, not timid. There is a chasm between being quiet and being commanding in quiet. Look at powerful negotiators. They ask a question, then remain still. The other party, drowning in discomfort, keeps talking, lowering demands, offering concessions, just to escape the tension. And the strategist, he nods once, as though he knew all along this was the outcome. Have you mastered this? Do you allow others to speak first, revealing the depth or shallowness of their intentions? Or do you waste your words trying to prove what your silence could imply? But there is a darker use. Silence does not only extract truth, it creates fear. The unknown is always feared more than the known. When you do not explain your position, people imagine it is stronger than it is. They believe you hold secrets. They assume you have plans they cannot see, and they are right. Because while they speak, you are watching, measuring, preparing your next move. Yet be warned. Too much silence breeds suspicion. The key lies in balance. Enough words to seem engaged, enough restraint to remain unreadable. This balance is power. A single sentence, spoken after long silence, carries more weight than 100 shouted arguments. And so we ask, what will you do with this weapon? Will you learn to let others bleed information into the quiet you command? Or will you, like the weak, drown your advantage in needless chatter? In the next stage, we explore the skill that gives silence its sharpest edge, the art of emotional detachment. For only the one who feels nothing can wield silence like a blade. Shall we continue? The one who feels nothing controls everything. Then emotion is the leash by which most are led. A single insult provokes their anger. Single loss cripples their will. A single gesture of affection blinds them to betrayal. But the rare few who detach themselves from feeling stand above the storm, watching as others drown in their own reactions. Consider this. How many kings fell because pride dictated their decisions? How many generals lost wars because fear clouded their judgment? How many alliances shattered because one man could not master his wounded ego? History does not remember their excuses. It remembers only their ruin. The strategist does not seek to become cold for cruelty's sake. He does it for survival, for clarity, for the ability to choose without the tremor of hesitation that emotion brings. Renaissance courts were battlefields of subtlety, where a misplaced word or impulsive glance could be interpreted as weakness. Those who loved openly were betrayed. Those who hated visibly were destroyed. But those who mastered detachment, they smiled when anger burned inside. They nodded when contempt screamed to be shown. They remained statues while others revealed their hands. Psychology calls this emotional regulation. But to the strategist, it is far more. It is armor. You see, feelings are predictable. Anger leads to rash action. Fear leads to retreat. Pride leads to overreach. And love blinds more surely than wine. Detach from these impulses, and you become unreadable, uncontrollable, unmoved by provocation or flattery alike. Have you ever been tested this way? Has someone insulted you, subtly enough to spark heat in your chest, and you let it pass without a flicker of reaction? Did they grow uneasy, realizing their barb failed to pierce? Did they start talking more, trying harder, only to reveal more of themselves than they intended? That is power, not striking back, but making them wonder if you even considered it. Cesare Borgia understood this well. When news of treachery reached him, he did not rage. He listened in silence, mask unbroken, calculating his reprisal, while the betrayer still believed himself safe. Then, at the precise moment, he acted, not with anger, but with precision. And it was this calm brutality, not fury, that secured his fearsome reputation. This same principle applies to you. When chaos erupts around you, can you remain composed? When people attack your character, can you smile? Not in weakness, but in the quiet knowledge that their aggression serves your strategy. Or do you flare like the masses, trading dignity for the hollow satisfaction of reaction? Emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of when and how to show it. A strategist may burn with rage inside, but he channels it into planning, not reckless outbursts. He may feel deep affection, but he guards it, showing only what secures loyalty, never what invites exploitation. Modern psychology confirms this Machiavellian truth: the calm mind wins. Studies of high-stakes negotiators reveal that those who regulate emotion gain the upper hand consistently, extracting concessions, while the emotional party loses ground word by word. But beware, detachment must never be mistaken for indifference. A cold man who feels nothing inspires no loyalty. A controlled man who knows when to offer warmth, when to feign anger, when to display concern. He commands everything. It is a performance, a discipline, a weapon sharpened in silence and sheathed in patience. And so I ask, can you master this art? Can you hold your tongue when pride demands a retort? Can you pause, observe, and choose with surgical precision when others tremble and lash out? For only then will you possess the composure of those who play the long game of power. Yet emotional detachment alone is not enough. To wield it fully, you must pair it with a subtler weapon: the ability to guide how others see reality itself. In the next stage, we explore the craft of controlling narratives, of shaping belief so expertly that people embrace your version of truth. Are you ready to become its author? Truth is not what happened. Truth is what people believe happened. The powerful have always known this. Events matter less than the story told about them. History remembers kings not as they were, but as their chroniclers chose to portray them. The one who controls the narrative controls perception. And perception, more than any blade or army, rules the world. Consider the fall of a ruler. Was he overthrown because he was weak? Or because someone convinced the people he was weak? The difference is subtle. The consequence, absolute. Narrative is not loud. It does not shout commands. It whispers suggestions, plants impressions, and allows others to believe they arrived at the conclusion themselves. This is its genius. It feels like truth, but it is design. The Renaissance was built upon this principle. Republics rose and crumbled not only by wars, but by the stories whispered in their courts. A rival could be ruined not through assassination, but through rumor, a narrative crafted to make his fall seem inevitable, even just. Have you seen this in modern life? A colleague branded reliable after a single mistake, not because of the error, but because someone repeated the tale until it hardened into identity. A public figure celebrated as a genius for ideas he did not conceive, because someone framed him as the mind behind them. Narrative does not just explain events. It defines the players, it crowns heroes, it buries fools, and it does so quietly while the crowd applauds its own judgment. Psychologists call it framing, the subtle shaping of context so that facts are seen in the light you choose. A failed venture can be called a calculated risk that yielded lessons. A ruthless decision can be cast as necessary sacrifice for the greater good. Words do not describe reality, they sculpt it. But how does one wield this weapon? By learning to ask, not what is true, but what must appear true. When you suffer a loss, do you let it define you? Or do you frame it as the test that forged your next victory? When rivals gain ground, do you call them fortunate, suggesting their success rests on chance rather than capability? Or do you call them desperate, implying their gain was a last act of survival? Each choice plants an image, each image spreads, each spread becomes memory, and memory becomes the only history that matters. Cesare Borgia mastered this art. When he punished traitors, he did not present it as vengeance. He staged it as justice. He let the people see him not as a tyrant, but as a savior who restored order. The executions were bloody. The story was noble, and thus the blood was forgotten. But take heed, narrative must feel natural. Too obvious, and it reeks of deceit. Too heavy-handed, and it provokes suspicion. The greatest manipulations are those that feel self-discovered. Let others think they have drawn their own conclusions. All you did was set the stage, choose the lighting, and hand them the script. And remember, narrative is not static. It is alive. It must be fed, reinforced, and shielded from contradiction. One misstep, one careless display of inconsistency, and the illusion collapses. But if maintained, it becomes unshakable, a reality no rival can undo. So I ask you, are you the subject of a story or its author? Do you let others define your image, your intentions, your legacy? Or do you craft them yourself, shaping perception long before truth has a chance to interfere? Yet even narrative control is not the pinnacle. There is a skill higher still, the ability to see patterns hidden beneath chaos, to predict the flow of events before they can be written. In the next stage, we explore this gift, the vision that separates the manipulator from the master strategist. Shall we continue? What appears as chaos to the masses is merely an untrained eye unable to read the design. Most people believe events unfold randomly, that fortune, chance, or fate governs outcomes. But the strategist knows better. He sees patterns where others see disorder. He reads the invisible lines that connect actions to consequences, ambition to betrayal, weakness to downfall. History is shaped not by those who react, but by those who predict. Those who read the game 3, 4, 10 moves ahead, while others stumble blindly from one surprise to another. Consider the rise and fall of empires. To the untrained mind, Rome's decline seemed sudden, a grand civilization collapsing overnight. But the signs were there decades before. Leaders grew indulgent, military discipline eroded, political corruption spread like disease. Each was a thread, together a pattern, and those who recognized it prepared their own ascension while Rome decayed. Patterns are not prophecy. They are probabilities, indicators hidden in behavior, economies, power structures. The perceptive mind does not wait for chaos to clarify itself. It anticipates. It prepares. It strikes when others are still asking what happened. Have you ever noticed how certain people always repeat the same mistakes? The friend who trusts the wrong partner, the rival who overreaches at the first taste of victory, the colleague who speaks too much when nervous. These are patterns, habits of character that dictate the future, as surely as seasons follow one another. But the highest form of this skill is not merely seeing patterns in people. It is seeing patterns in power. Borgia recognized early that alliances based on fear must eventually crumble, for fear decays the moment it is not reinforced. Thus, he alternated ruthlessness with generosity, calculating precisely when to display each. To his enemies, he seemed unpredictable. In truth, he was following a pattern so refined that it appeared like chaos to all but himself. Psychologists call this pattern recognition and predictive modeling. But stripped of clinical terms, it is simple. You notice what others miss because you are not distracted by noise. Where they see confusion, you see rhythm. Where they see coincidence, you see inevitability. This is why strategists study human nature relentlessly, not to judge morality, but to forecast behavior. If you know that pride always precedes reckless overreach, then you can push your rival toward pride and wait for the inevitable misstep. If you know that desperation breeds risk, you can tighten the noose around an opponent until fear forces him to gamble and lose. But let us bring this closer to you. Look around your own life. Do you see the same disputes repeating with different faces? Do you notice how certain people always play the same roles? The flatterer, the betrayer, the loyal follower. These are not accidents. They are patterns of human nature waiting to be exploited by those who have the discipline to watch. The masses believe the world is unpredictable because they look only at events. The strategist studies motives, timing, tendencies. And from these, future becomes visible. But caution, pattern recognition is dangerous. Once others suspect you see beyond appearances, they will fear what else you might know. And fear breeds preemptive strikes. Thus, like all power, this skill must be cloaked in modesty. So I ask you, do you merely witness the chaos of life? Or do you read its code, predicting the turn of events before they unfold? In the next stage, we explore the final shield of the strategist, discretion. For what use is foresight if others see how far you can see? Will you learn to conceal it? The less they know, the more they fear. Power is not always in what you possess, but in what others believe you possess. And belief thrives best in the shadows. Discretion is not simply the act of keeping secrets. It is the art of revealing so little that people must invent the rest. And their imagination will always grant you far more than reality ever could. In the courts of Renaissance Italy, rulers who spoke freely of their plans invited conspiracies. Their intentions, once known, were countered, sabotaged, or stolen. But those who kept their counsel close, those who moved without explanation, were untouchable. For no one could predict their strike. Consider this: when a man tells you everything, do you not begin to judge him? To measure his words against his actions? To calculate his weaknesses? Yet, when a man says little, does your mind not labor to fill the void? Does it not whisper, what does he know? What is he planning? What is he capable of? Silence invites speculation. Speculation invites fear. Fear creates power. History rewards the discreet. Julius Caesar spoke often, and thus Brutus and Cassius knew enough to move against him. But Augustus, he cloaked his intentions behind humility, appearing reluctant to rule until he held the empire in his hand. By the time Rome realized his true ambition, it was already law. Psychology explains why this works. Human beings hate uncertainty. When they cannot place you, when they cannot predict you, they imagine the worst. And the worst they imagine is often far more powerful than the truth you withhold. Have you ever entered a room and said nothing, watched as others spoke nervously, their tone betraying what they feared you might know? Have you offered only half an answer, only for the listener to reveal far more in the silence that followed? This is discretion weaponized. It makes others reveal themselves while you remain unreadable. But discretion is more than withholding words. It is masking intent. The discreet strategist may display warmth while planning betrayal. He may feign weakness while preparing strength. He may concede small truths only to hide greater ones. It is a game of shadows, where every gesture is deliberate and every omission more revealing than confession. Consider the cunning of those who share fragments of their strategy. Just enough to mislead, just enough to distract, while their true designs remain unseen. Rivals chase the decoy, never realizing the real plan moves silently beneath their feet. But take heed. Discretion must never feel like concealment. If you appear secretive, suspicion sharpens. If you appear open while saying almost nothing, you gain trust without exposure. This is the balance. Appear approachable, but remain impenetrable. Share words, but never the whole truth. Offer glimpses, but never the map. And what of your personal life? The same rules apply. Not every ally deserves to know your plans. Not every friend needs to see your vulnerabilities. And no rival should ever discern where your strength truly lies. The discreet man does not boast of victories. He lets others assume they were inevitable. He does not warn of retaliation. He strikes without announcement. He does not defend his name against every whisper. He lets mystery shield him more effectively than explanation. So I ask, what do people know of you? Your words, your plans, your fears, or only what you allow them to imagine? For if they know too much, you are vulnerable. If they know too little, you are feared. But if they know nothing, you are untouchable. And yet, there remains one final question. What is the cost of such mastery? What toll does it take to live unseen, feared, and always one move ahead? In the conclusion, we confront the weight of power itself, and whether you are ready to bear it. Are you prepared to find out? Control is most effective when unseen, influence disguised as chance, guidance mistaken for choice, victory taken for granted, as if it were inevitable. Those who command openly invite resistance. Those who command invisibly invite loyalty, fear, and obedience, without their subjects ever knowing why. The signs we have uncovered: perception, silence, detachment, narrative, foresight, and discretion, are not tricks, they are instruments. Instruments for shaping men as sculptors shape stone. Quietly, methodically, and without protest, ask yourself, will you wield them? Or will you remain among those who mistake freedom for the absence of chains? If this strikes a chord with you, leave your thoughts below. What sign did you see in yourself? Which will you master next? Subscribe for more Machiavellian strategies, where psychology, history, and power converge. And share this with those who think they cannot be controlled. They already are.